Good morning, Dragon Folk. Welcome on in. Labor Day, 6th of September. You can get a Ashen Wings logo on a coffee mug for yourself at our merch link down in the description below. Also, you understand what this title is happening already. We are going over more spoilers for Innistrad Midnight Hunt. So, if you guys enjoy spoilers and you enjoy getting more information about these cards and generally how they can be worked in, please make sure to just gently give that like button a little kiss. And then hit the subscribe button as well. We do daily content here. I try to keep up with as many of the spoiler things for Magic as possible. But I'm usually not home on the weekends, so I can't really make content. But that will change at one point, and I'll be able to make content for stuff on a more regular basis once I eventually move. So, here today, we have more stuff for Innistrad Midnight Hunt. We'll go ahead and bring it on right on over. Bam, here we are. So, Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Got a ton of stuff brought up over the weekend. We have, I'm going to go ahead and just go over these, right? So some of them are not in English, and some of them have day-bound, night-bound stuff, as we've talked about in previous things. So I want to kind of go over each and every one of them just to kind of get the better idea of what every card does. So I actually don't think I did have him in there. Okay, so the first card in here, Mysterious Tome. It's a blue artifact. You can pay 2 and then tap, draw a card, and transform Mysterious Tome into this card, which I don't actually know what the name of the card is, but its ability seems to be, these are all rough translations, I imagine, so it might not be the exact same way when the card is in English. But it says, pay 1, tap this, tap target non-land permanent, and then transform. So it looks like you switch between this and this. So you can pay 2, tap this, draw a card, pay 1, tap this, tap target non-land permanent. So pretty well utilized card. Every time it taps and attacks, every time it attacks, it doesn't attack. It's just an artifact. Every time it taps and you pay its thing, you get to do something that benefits yourself, which is really great. So, go ahead and cut this one out of there. So, next we have the Neville Gas Intruder, which is a blue and 2 other flash flying spirit creature. It's 2/1. When Neville Gas Intruder enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature an opponent controls gets -2, -0 until end of turn. Let's go ahead and let's make these a little bit more up in the way here. Let me do that thing where I move my camera and then we flip it. So give me 1 sec. We'll go ahead and just flip this bad boy here. Bam. Cool. All right. So back at it. So we have the Neville Gas Intruder. Flash flying. Gets -2, -0 until the end of turn. So if I recall correctly, this is essentially Zulaport Duelist, if I recall correctly. Zulaport Duelist is a flash. I don't think it's got flying, but it's got flash. And when it enters the battlefield, a creature your opponent controls gets -2, -0 until the end of turn. So kind of a way for you to get in, stop something from happening, block it, and then, kill it. Then we have this card, which is Hidden Cut Purse. I'm going to go ahead and bop over here. Hidden Cut Purse. It's a black and 2 other transforming thing. When this card enters the battlefield, destroy target creature you don't control that was dealt damage this turn, and then you can disturb it for a black and 4 other for Geist something or other. It becomes a creature. Well, it's already been a creature. So this goes from a 2/1 to a 2/2 Spirit Rogue, Flying and Death Touch. And if this card dies, exile it instead. So that's the disturb stuff, right? Disturb is essentially you get to use it again, and it's sometimes more powerful, sometimes more efficient. But if it dies, it gets exiled. So kind of one of those things. Like, you have the ability to bring it back from your grave as something else. So very nice there. So next, we have the Burley Breaker. So we'll go over to the Burley Breaker here. Burley Breaker has Ward 1. So whenever it becomes a target of a spell or an ability, they have to pay 1 extra mana. And it's a Daybound card. So it costs 2 green and 3 other for a 6/5. That's honestly pretty fantastic. A 6/5 for 5, not too bad. Not to mention that it's got a Nightbound side, which is a werewolf. So werewolves are, I already see Ghoul werewolves being a big thing. So this is just another thing for them. When it transforms from its Daybound to its Nightbound, it becomes the Dire Strain Demolisher, which is an 8/7 with Ward 3. So even with dropping 5, right, and having a 6/5 with Ward 1, you then, if at any point it becomes nighttime, Ward 3. So now it's even harder to target, and it's got more power, more toughness, and it's just a werewolf. Crazy. Okay, so definitely like that card a lot. Then we have the Tainted Adversary. Got a 1 black and 1 other. It's a zombie. Death Touch. When Tainted Adversary enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 and a black any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many +1/+1 counters on Tainted Adversary. Then create twice that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed. Wow. So I was wondering where the big zombie support was going to be for this set. Obviously, there's zombie support, but it was always like summon 1 undead, right? Summon 1 2/2 zombie with Decayed. And that's it. Like, if you have nothing else on the field with Decayed, you can't summon anything with Decayed. This, you play this end game, right? Play it on the board, and if your opponent does not kill it, if it doesn't die to removal, and you have at least 6 mana, 6 black, or like 2 black and 2 and 4 other, you can put 2 +1/+1 counters on Tainted Adversary, therefore making it a 4/5, and then you can make 4 2/2 black zombie creature tokens for 6. That's a lot to do for 6. That's a lot. So, very cool. Definitely going to be a zombie, a big Rakdos zombie kind of stuff. Maybe not Rakdos. I see Rakdos as more of the vampire and less of the zombie. Green, I think Golgari zombies are probably going to be what's going to be the big thing. Golgari zombies / skeletons are probably going to be what that's going to be, but this is just nuts. Candlegrove Witch. This is also a card that is in its, I believe they called this the, I called it the Eclipse art, but it wasn't that. It was something else. I honestly still can't remember. I try to remember. I can't remember. Whatever. It's in its alternate, it's showcase art, right? We're going to call this the showcase art, which still looks so good. So good. As somebody who collects the showcase cards, so good. I'm very excited to collect these. So Candlegrove Witch, it's a human warlock, 1 white, 1 other, and you get Coven. Beginning of your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, gains flying into the end of turn. So, a lot of the Coven things are at the beginning of combat on your turn. So, it's going to be weird to kind of see, because I know Selesnya is big on counters, so getting counters up and everything like that, especially using things like Luminarch Aspirant in this deck, it's going to be very good. We have the Hedge Witch's Mask, an artifact equipment, 1 white. Quick creature gets +1/+1, can't be blocked by creatures with power 4 or greater. Now that's pretty good, because if you get something that's like a 6/6 or something, and you put this on there, they can't attack, like they can't be blocked by 4 or greater. which is amazing because you can just, that means you can pretty much, unless they have like 8 1/1s or something, they can just go through your defenses, and that's pretty great. Because normally in Selesnya, like I said, with the +1/+1 counters, you're going to get a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, right, like, you know, make it so it's, you know, make it so it's, the, you know, a 10/10 or whatever with all its counters, and then just be able to swing in without having a block. So, pretty great. Ritual Guardian. Coven, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, Ritual Guardian gains a lifelink until the end of turn. I genuinely see Coven as being... Sorry to like go on a tangent every time I describe a card. I genuinely see Coven as being a very strong keyword in these sets, in the next coming standard. Just because... I mean, granted, you need to have 3 or more creatures, which means you need to go wide at all times. This whole thing dies to, like, Doomscar, Blood in the Snow, like, anything that can mass wipe something. If you can wipe the board, you're probably going to take care of the Coven stuff. But Coven stuff also does get a lot of green, a lot of stuff that, like, has, like, hexproof and such, so you have, like, things like Snakeskin Veil and other things. So I would say... We're going to have to see how it goes. We're going to have to see how many people genuinely run board wipes or how many people are running board wipes in their sideboard. But for right now, it's not too bad. Sun Gold Barrage. Destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. So I'm not in love with it for 3. It's not so bad, but that's really going to be a rough one. Specifically, it looks like it's for werewolves. Werewolves are going to have a lot of toughness. Oh, there's Candlegrove Witch again in her regular art. You then have the Celestis Sanctifier. If it's neither day nor night, it becomes day. A Celestis Sanctifier enters the battlefield. And then whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your graveyard. So we're going to have to see how many people genuinely abuse the night and day cycles. I imagine the werewolves are going to want to abuse it. The werewolf decks are going to want to abuse the night and day cycles. But they want to keep their stuff in Nightbound. So I'm wondering if there are cards that like are like perpetual night or perpetual day, where you can just keep it at all times. That would be something. I wonder if that's maybe that'll come out in like Crimson Vow or something. All right, so next on the list we have the Geist Patrician. Not in English, so we're gonna have to go over here. It's a blue 2/other for a 2/2 flying creature. Other spirits you control get +1/+1. Spells you cast from the graveyard cost 1 less to cast. So that means all your disturb cards. It looks like Azorius is probably going to be our disturb thing. Disturb flyers almost. Cost 1 less to cast, which is pretty great, I would say. Pretty fantastic. So not too bad. Not too bad of a card. It's a 2/2 flyer. You can't really go wrong, I guess. This next card is just 1 blue human. So, not sure on the name of it specifically, but it looks like it's just a 1/3 human. And it says, when this card dies, mill 3 cards. And then you can disturb it for 2 blue and 3 other to get a 3/4 flyer that says, when this enters the battlefield, shuffle up to 3 target cards into your library. Now, 3 target cards probably from your graveyard into your library. But if it means 3 target cards at all, I don't know how that would work entirely. Just because like you're not going to take things from your opponent's side and put it into your deck. I mean, theoretically you could, but you'd know what's coming. So all right. The next card is Fearless Adversary. It's a mythic, it looks like. It's a 1 white, 1 other, 3/1 human with lifelink. When this card enters the battlefield, you pay 1 in a white any number of times. Put that many courage counters on this card. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each courage counter on this card. Wow. The creatures in general or just creatures? Because, like, that's really good. It costs 1 and a white. It costs 1 and a white to play, and then you can play 2 any number of times when it enters the battlefield, and it gets a bunch of courage counters. So this thing could essentially be, theoretically, you play this late game, you get like a 7/4 or 7/5. Wild. All right, so now we'll move on to the Auger of Autumn. That's 2 green and 1 other. For a 2/3 human druid, once again, Selesnya stuff. Human Selesnya seems to be kind of a route that they're really being heavy on. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play lands from the top of your library. Pretty great, okay. As long as you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. So you essentially get to do stuff early. You get another card in your hand, essentially. The only downside to this, though, is that your opponent will pretty much get to see what card it is. So you'll have to see if that's going to work out, if that's what they want. So turn the earth. That's a 1 green instant. Choose up to 3 target cards in graveyards. The owner of those cards shuffles them into your library as you gain 2 life. And then you can flashback it too. So probably a great way to get your werewolves back. Probably also a great way to get your humans back for Selesnya. So not bad. Defend the Celestis. That's 2 green and 2 other. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures you control. So, also, you're seeing a lot of flavor text in these too, which is really nice. So, Witch, Werewolf, and Cathar stood shoulder to shoulder around the sun gold block at the center of the ritual, ready to stop the Torvald's assault, or die trying. So it seems that the werewolves are trying, essentially, I think I may have gone over this in my previous video, but essentially, the werewolves are trying to keep it night forever. And the humans are trying to make it day. Again, not try to take away night, but to day and night to make it more regular. So that's kind of the concept. But I imagine Defend the Celestis is specifically going to be used. Granted, you can use this in freaking Ghoul werewolves too. But it's probably going to be used in Selesnya humans also. Corpse Cobble. Very like blurry card on my end, but I'm going to kind of go over this. It is a black and a blue, and as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice any number of creatures. Create an XX blue and black zombie creature token with Menace, where X is the total power of the sacrificed creatures. So, if you get a bunch of those 2/2 zombies out, you play this and sacrifice them, you could get like a 10/10 blue and black zombie creature token with Menace, because they all cost 2. And then if you sacrifice anything more than that, I mean, that's a lot. And it's got flashback too, so even better. You can just do it again. So, all right, the next one we have here is the Cleansefire Dragon. It's a red creature, so dragons. I didn't think I'd see dragons in Innistrad, but I'm happy to see dragons in Innistrad. Just another thing to put in your dragon decks, because dragons got a huge amount of support in the last set, in the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, so obviously more dragons. It's got flying. It's a 4/3 for 5, so a little expensive. When it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. If that creature is a zombie, deal 2 damage to it instead. So probably a sideboard card if you really want to run it, but it's a little expensive, and truly it's not like worth it. It is nice though that if it's a zombie, it deals 2 damage to it instead, because technically all of the decayed zombies that seem to be animated, or I should say reanimated, as you know, the effects go off, they're all 2/2 zombies. So Unless there's something that buffs them very heavily, I don't see much in regards to that. So, not bad. Immolation. Enchant creature gets +2/-2 for 1 red. So, that could be removal. That could be something very good, depending on what you play it on. But I guess that's all depending. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out. Normally, when you see the uncommon and the common cards, it's like, I'm not sure how well they're going to work in decks. But then you see the rares and the mythics, and you're like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like, I get it. All right. Voldaren Ambusher. It's a 1 red and 2 other. It's a vampire archer. So, once again, like I was saying, Rakdos seems to be getting a lot of the vampire support in red and black. So, probably what's going to happen with Crimson Vow and with here, when Voldaren Ambusher enters the battlefield and if an opponent lost life this turn, it deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of vampires you control. Huh. So an opponent has to have lost life this turn, which is probably, it was really easy to do with vampires. It deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of vampires you control. Not bad. Not bad. I wish there was a way for us to do Boros vampires, because you could use Teleportation Circle for this and just make it happen. Lisa, the Forgotten Archangel. Okay, new Orzhov Angel, pretty hype. Didn't know what this was. Don't know what this is. It costs you 5, 2 white, a black, and 2 other. So kind of expensive, right? 4/5 Angel, flying and lifelink, so useful. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. So, non-token creature you control dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So not the end step, your next end step. So essentially, you get to keep all of your cards, and none of them go to the grave. Well, it does go to the grave, and if it gets removed from the graveyard before Lisa's ability went off, I imagine the target is gone. If I'm recalling how that works, obviously, if you guys know more about this specific effect, if a creature dies, gets put into the graveyard, right? And then something like Scavenging Ooze removes it from exiles it from the graveyard. Does that card come back to your hand still at the beginning of the next end step, or is it because it's no longer in the graveyard, it's been exiled, it doesn't come back? Rulings. This is why I'm not a judge. I love to learn, though, so one day at a time. This next card is the Dawnheart Wardens. I believe we saw artwork for this during the showcase. But we have a green, a white, and 1 other. It's a creature, a 3/3 creature, so 3/3 for 3, not bad. Vigilance and Coven. At the beginning of combat on your turn, 3 more creatures with different power. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. That's not, like, super powerful. That's not super powerful. But it's got Vigilance, and that's actually pretty great for a 3. So I would say that's worth it. I just really want to know at least, because I want to know if Orzhov Angels is still going to be something I'm going to be able to run. Ghoul Caller's Harvest is a sorcery for a black and a green. Create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed, where X is half the number of creature cards in your graveyard, rounded up. Wow. Wow. That is kind of insane. X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed. X is half the number of creature cards in your graveyard, rounded up. Not bad. It's Golgari, so it's probably going to go in the undead deck. Wild. Flesh Taker. Oh, can we just, like... Look how weird that card looks. Oh, I don't like that. Flesh Taker, a human assassin, Orzhov, 2/2.
Whenever you sacrifice another creature, you gain 1 life and scry 1. You can pay 1 to sacrifice another creature. Flesh Taker gets +2/+2 till end of turn. Not in love with it. Not in love with it. A 2/2 for 2 is fine, but the fact you got to sacrifice another creature, I mean, like, I guess you really got to kind of figure out what you need. All right. The next card we have is, let's actually just, yeah, okay. So Diagraph Rebirth. This is Golgari, black, a green, and 3 other. Spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that died this turn. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it very well could, if you literally swung in with all of your decayed zombies, if you swung in with 3 decayed zombies and they died, you'd be able to cast this R2 and bring a target creature card back from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it's got flashback, which means if you do it again, you can then pay 2 and flashback it. That's going to be a good card. I expect to see a lot of that. I think the only downside I see with these is, like, yeah, they have fantastic ways to fill the board, but if you so much as get any of these countered, like if they get countered, you probably are not going to be doing anything. Like, I went against, on a tangent here, I went against Dimir Control recently on Arena. I was not having fun. And so I imagine there are plenty of decks that are going to be like that, where it's just not going to be fun to play. The next card we have here is Sludge Monster. It's 2 blue and 3 other, a creature horror, 5/5. So pretty average. Whenever Sludge Monster enters the battlefield or attacks, put a slime counter on up to 1 other target creature. Non-horror creatures with slime counters on them lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 2/2. So you pretty much devolve these monsters and make them super weak. Now, I want to say that if something transforms, it loses its counter. So if it transforms, then if a creature transforms, it probably doesn't keep the counter. But the fact that it does, oh no, it'll lose all abilities, so it won't transform. Never mind. So it can turn literally any of your creatures into a 2/2 blocker. Like, and not even a blocker, I mean, you can attack with them, but like a 2/2 chump. That's kind of nuts. So yeah, Sludge Monster. Pretty crazy. I don't know when I'd run it. I don't know when I would run something like this. But maybe you make a horror deck. You know, you've got Mind Flayer, I think, is a horror. You've got a bunch of, like, well, oozes are oozes, but I'm sure there's something. It'll be nice for Commander, at least, I'm sure. So that'd be fun. Unnatural Growth. 4 green and 1 other. So specifically 4 green and 1 other. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until the end of turn. What? What? Holy crap. That's so strong. Werewolves are already insane. Could you imagine that 8/7 werewolf doubling it? 16/14? Like, for 5? I mean, I think the only downside is you need 4 green mana specifically. But that's not going to be hard to do in green. You have ramp? You have dual lands? Like, this is going to be so... Ghoul werewolves are probably going to run a good portion of... They might be strong, but I think their whole thing is they don't have a lot of things to stop them from, like, board wipes and, you know, they don't have answers to things like counters other than, like, Snakeskin Veil. But you can't Snakeskin Veil something that hasn't been summoned yet, and if you're countering it when it's being summoned, then so on and so forth. But that's insane. Wild to me. Wild to me.
that's going to be a card that's going to go for a lot. Because not only is it good, this is the other thing that everybody's got to think of when we go over these cards, right? I mainly play Standard a lot, so I see I see the way that they can be used in Standard. But there are plenty of people who look at this card and go, whoa, my big thing commander deck or modern deck, like, and I wonder what happens if you have multiple of them, right? It's not a legendary enchantment or anything, so, like, do they all go off? And they all do the same thing, or is it just one? Like, if I play it, and I have 2 on the field, right? Does it double and then double again? Because that's absolutely insane. So for Commander, for Modern, Historic, this is going to be a good card to have, for sure. All right, the next card we have on the list is the Croaking Counterpart. This is a Simic card, so 1 blue, 1 green, 1 other. Create a token that's a copy of target non-frog creature, except it's a 1/1 green frog. Okay, so you can keep their abilities and such. You couldn't transform them. So if it was like a transform thing or like a daybound nightbound thing, then you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to use something that's along the lines of like Mind Flayer. Something that, like, when it hits the battlefield or at the beginning of an end step or something, it does something like that. So that's interesting. It's got to be a non-frog creature, though. So I imagine there are not many frog creatures. Maybe in, like, Commander, right? But not in Standard right now. Faithful Mending. This is Azorius. 1 blue, 1 white. You gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. And then you can flash back it for 1 extra. So you get a lot of value out of that, but you also discard 2 cards. But if it's Azorius, right, you can discard cards that have things like Disrupt. And so, or Disturb, Disturb. You have a lot of things that you can put in Disturb, so you can use this to put your Disturb cards that you don't want to summon into your graveyard, and then if you want, you can then summon them for their Disturb cost, instead of having to summon them and then wait for them to die and then have them resummon. Because I imagine if your disturbed creature is so powerful and like its ability is really great when it's disturbed and you're able to summon it from the grave, your opponent is not going to want to kill it. So they're not going to worry about that. You know, they might get like flyers to go over you. They might like put an enchantment on it to make it not be able to block, that kind of thing. Because genuinely, you're probably going to not want to be like, oh yeah, like let me just kill this creature that definitely gets stronger when it is brought back from the grave. So this here is the Ghoulish Procession, another black card here. It's just 1 black, 1 other. Enchantment. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures die, create a 2/2 black zombie creature with Decayed. The ability only triggers once per turn. More zombie stuff. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures die, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Go wide zombies is probably going to be a very popular meta, because zombies are just good. But you have to be on top of it, right? You have to get things like this. You can also use things like Dog Pursuit. I've liked Dog Pursuit ever since I've started using it in drafts. Dog Pursuit's from Kaldheim. It's literally at the end of your turn. You gain a life, your opponent loses a life, right? So you just keep going wide, keep doing things like this, where like if something happens, create stuff, you'll have no problem. And it's a pretty cheap enchantment too, so not bad. Now, Pithing Needle, if I recall correctly, Pithing Needle's a reprint. Give me a second. I am correct. Pithing Needle is, in fact, a reprint. Funny enough, this card actually has a Kaladesh Inventions card. So you can buy it for like $200. But Pithing Needle's a reprint. You can actually pick up this card online for like $5. I think Return from Ravnica it came out in. Saviors of Kamigawa it came out in. It's had a reprint several times. But It is nice to see it again. It's funny that this didn't come out in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. That's going to be coming out in the set after Crimson Vow, I think. So, interesting that we're getting it so early, but hey, Pithing Needle. Very interesting card. You pay 1, it's an artifact. As it enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So, essentially, transform abilities couldn't be activated. Which I guess theoretically would stop things like Enduring Angel. Then, gosh, I mean, there's several things I'm sure you can use this with to essentially just stop it from being able to have abilities. So, like, Righteous Valkyrie, right? Righteous Valkyrie is something that you definitely would want to stop. You could even do that for that enchantment, the 4 green and 1 that doubles everything at the beginning of combat. So, not a bad card. I think that's very situational. Definitely going to be sideboarded because you just don't know what your opponent's playing until you play it, and then you're like, oh, okay, I know what card I know what card they're running that I know I don't want to have to deal with. Pithing Needle. So the next card up here, Curse of Silence, 1 white. You can enchant a player. As Curse of Silence enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Spells with the chosen name enchanted player casts cost 2 more to cast. And then whenever an enchanted player casts a spell with the chosen name, you may sacrifice Curse of Silence, and if you do, draw a card. So, stops your opponent from being able to summon... Well, it doesn't stop them. It makes it more expensive for your opponent to summon the things that are really powerful in their deck. And then, if they do summon it, you can always sacrifice this card and then draw a card because they did end up summoning it. But I'd probably just keep it on there because then it makes it more expensive. So, we'll see. Seize the Storm. You get 1 red, 4 other sorcery. Create a red elemental creature token with trample, and this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard, plus the number of cards with flashback you own in exile. And this card has flashback. So, Is It Spells is going to be very, very crazy. I already know Is It Dragons is crazy right now. But Is It Spells is probably going to be pretty nasty with, you have Imrith, you have, Goldspan Dragon. These things are going to allow you to do a lot of spell work and a lot of things like removal. You have blue, which is counters, and there's a lot of things that can be done to kind of keep that going. But, this could be like an 11-11 turn, like 7 or something. So, pretty crazy thing there. The next card we have is the Graveyard Trespasser. So this is a Daybound Nightbound card. So this is a werewolf. This is a black werewolf. I don't think we've seen werewolf in black yet. I've mainly seen it in red and green. Maybe I passed it. But Graveyard Trespasser, it's got ward, discard a card. And whenever Graveyard Trespasser enters the battlefield or attacks, exile to one target card from a graveyard. If a creature card was exiled this way, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this would be good for something like going against the Disturb stuff, because you'd be able to exile something from their grave that they couldn't get. You'd be able to exile something from their grave that they couldn't get back. It's also a 3/3 for 3, so not terrible. But it's a Daybound card, so if a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night next turn. I think this is also kind of an interesting thing, because the whole Daybound Nightbound cycle is really determined on blue players. Because if people, like, blue doesn't have to do their turn on their turn. So if it becomes night, they can, then your opponent will have better things, right? So maybe that's like a hit against blue, but also if they play 2 turns, at least 2 spells during their own turn, it becomes day next turn. So that's how that is. But anyway, Graveyard Glutton is the Nightbound version of this. It's got ward, discard a card still, and then whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, so literally anytime this card transforms, You can exile up to 1 or 2 target cards from graveyards. For each creature card exiled this way, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So, literally the same concept over and over. So anytime this enters the battlefield or attacks, as long as it's day, or if it switches between day or night often, you can remove their entire graveyard and have them lose a life and gain a life if they're creatures. So definitely very very like, I don't know, situational. It might be good in like mono black, but I don't think this will be run in werewolves. Next, we have more Rakdos stuff for the vampires. The Vampire Socialite. 1 black, 1 blue, 2/2. Or, I'm sorry, not blue. 1 black, 1 red. 2/2 creature. Vampire Noble. It's got Menace. When Vampire Socialite enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. Rakdos Vampires, guys. I would love to start getting the vampire cards for this set so that I can be prepared for the vampire cards that come out in Crimson Vow. You already have Drana, the Blood Chief. She's a fantastic vampire card. And now you have all these other vampire cards, these Rakdos Vampires. You have Immersturm Predator, which is a vampire dragon, and it's a very good Rakdos card. So I might end up playing Rakdos Vampires. It seems like a very fun thing. So like, obviously when it enters the battlefield, bam, +1/+1 counters on each other vampire you control if an opponent lost life this turn. So as long as they can lose life before you summon Vampire Socialite, bam. As long as an opponent lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So if you can get your opponent to lose life at the beginning of your turn, now everything that enters the battlefield gets an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Insane. This is the Celestis. This is the big like story card essentially for Innistrad Midnight Hunt. This is a 3-drop legendary artifact, and if it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as the Celestis enters the battlefield. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, or you can pay 3 and tap it. If it's night, it becomes day. Otherwise, it becomes night. Activate only as a sorcery. So that gives you the ability to force the switch. So if your stuff specifically needs to be done for day, or you want it to specifically be night, you can pay that cost, flip it, and then boom, now everything becomes nightbound or daybound. When day becomes night and night becomes day, you gain 1 life. You may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this is going to be the card that if people are going to abuse the day-night cycle, that's what they're going to want to do. Then we have Kessig Naturalist. This is a 2-drop red-green Ghoul. So it's got 2/2. Whenever Kessig Naturalist attacks, add green or red. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So you get a free mana. That's pretty great. It's like getting a treasure. Free mana for 2, and you get a 2/2 creature. And then, if it's Nightbound, other wolves and werewolves you control get +1/+1. Definitely going to be a nice buff, right? It's a 3/3. And then whenever Lord of the Ulden Vault attacks, add green or red. Till the end of turn, you don't lose this mana. So, a buff for all of your werewolves. So, I just don't... I mean, having a bunch of Daybound cards on the board, and then the second you flip to Nightbound, this is going to be crazy. Because if you play this, the Celestis, and then you flip everything to have it be, Nightbound before you begin your combat phase, now you have a whole bunch of crazy werewolves. All right. Next, we'll do the Arcane Infusion. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in random order. Another Izzet spell stuff. Sereth the Viper Fang. We already went over Sereth in the last one, but this is her main art. Still very cool. The next one we're going to do, another vampire, the Falcon Wreath Pit Fighter. So this is you pay 1, it's a 2/1 vampire. You pay 1 red, you pay 1 and a red, discard a card, sacrifice a vampire. Draw 2 cards. Activate only if an opponent has lost life this turn. I'm not sure if I would ever use this. But if madness is a thing in here, then maybe. Because I don't think it is. They didn't go over the fact that madness was in here, but you could use this in a madness commander deck, and that I would imagine would be pretty great. Lunar Frenzy. Target creature you can control gets +X+0 and gains first strike and trample until the end of turn. That's an instant. More Ghoul Werewolf stuff. That's just a nice buff because it's X. And it's cheap. So you can give something like +7/+0 first strike and trample and just barrel over something. The Devoted Graphkeeper. So this is a Azorius. This is another one of the disturbed ones. Enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, tap target creature you don't control. You can disturb it for 1 more. It becomes the Departed Soulkeeper. 3/1 flyer. Can only block creatures with flying. And if Departed Soulkeeper would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So, not bad. I'm not seeing a ton of love for the disturb stuff. I'm sure there's a mythic that disturbs that's like absolutely insane, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot of get your stuff on the field, attempt to do something. When it dies, then you can summon it again, have it do new things. The Gavity Dawnguard, a human soldier, got ward 1. If it's neither day nor night, it becomes day as it enters the battlefield. When day becomes night or night becomes day, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So, nice way to kind of scry and get stuff to your hand. It's another one of those things where, like, if you're going to try and abuse the day-night cycle, like with the Celestis, this will allow you to do that. Blade Stitch Scab. That's a 1 black, 1 blue. Other zombies you control get +1/+0. So, I don't know whether or not they're going for green Golgari zombies or Dimir zombies, but Golgari zombies seems like it's pretty effective. Dimir zombies, you have that sense of control. So I could see where that also leads in, but I'm not quite sure. Dissipate. Counter target spell. So 2 blue and a 1. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to its owner's graveyard. Pretty great. Going against those that is it stuff. Then we have the Pantry Zombie. It's a 1/3 zombie for 1, so pretty great to start. Defender. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. That's all depending, I guess. I'm not in love with it, but I'm sure people are going to have a good reason to use it. So, maybe. The Hobbling Zombie. It's got Death Touch. So, a 3-drop for 2/2. Not very great, but it does have the Death Touch. When Hobbling Zombie dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. So, you get 2 creatures, the price of 1 and Death Touch. It's not too bad. Gisa, the Glorious Resurrector. 2 black, 2 other. Human Wizard. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Already amazing. Gets rid of the entirety of the disturb thing, and they don't have a graveyard. If they don't have a graveyard, they can't use things like Graveyard Recursion. So, very good. At the beginning of your upkeep, put all creature cards exiled with Giza Glorious Resurrector onto the battlefield under your control. They gain Decayed. Huh. So, wait a minute. Okay. So essentially, she exiles them when they die. And then on our next upkeep, we get to bring them out onto our side of the battlefield with Decayed. We either get to keep them, or we can attack with them, and it sacrifices itself at the end of combat. So that depends if we end up getting something absolutely crazy. This is big, mono black removal. Very, very strong card. I would make a commander out of this. This is, wow. Okay. All right, cool, Giza. You're real neat. I like that. The next card we actually have, which I don't know why I didn't do that. Flame Channeler. It's a human wizard.
1 red and 1 other. When a spell you control deals damage, transform Flame Channeler into the Embodiment of Flame. 3/3. Whenever a spell you control deals damage, put a flame counter on Embodiment of Flame. You can then pay 1 and remove a flame counter. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. More is it spell kind of stuff like Spell Burn. I'm not sure if it's going to be like the best ever, but we'll have to see. Siege Zombie. This is a 1 black, 1 other for a 2/2 zombie. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Each opponent loses 1 life. So, theoretically, you could do this to have people lose life on their turn, but it's a little expensive. 3 untapped creatures you control, and then you just lose 1 life. Not very great. Clear Shot. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So that specifically right there is not fight, which is important. That card does not say fight, and the fight mechanic is 2 monsters, pretty much battle, right? And there's a chance that your monster could die, or their monster could die. This, on the other hand, it gives your creature a +1/+1 counter, and then it takes its power and literally just shoots it at an opponent's creature. And you essentially get a free kill off that. Not a bad instant to play. Not a bad instant to play in Selesnya humans or in Ghoul werewolves. Probably better in Ghoul werewolves, to be entirely honest, since their base stuff is already higher, but who's to say? This is a land cycle again, just in its regular form, so not a bad idea. This is Trapped in the Graveyard. Pay 1 and an other. Enchant Creature. When it enters the battlefield and there are 5 or more cards in your graveyard, tap Enchanted Creature. Enchanted Creature doesn't untap. More control. I'm probably not going to see a lot of it, maybe in drafts, but not really a lot. Then there's the Fangblade Thief, a human werewolf. Pay 1 and a red. This gets +1/+0 and first strike until the end of turn. And a Daybound card. So 3/4 for 4. You can pay 1 and a red and it gets +1/+0 and first strike, which a 4/4 with first strike isn't so bad. But then its Nightbound ability, if he's a werewolf, it's a 4/5. 1 and a red, it gets +1/+0 and first strike until end of turn. You can then pay 4 and a red. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until the end of turn. So this is a nice way to go wide and just completely get stuff in there and bring it through. But even still, a 5/5 with first strike for 2, that's pretty good. I wouldn't say no to that. Curse of the Shaken Faith. Enchant player. When enchanted player casts a spell other than the first spell they cast each turn, or copies a spell, Curse of Shaken Faith deals 2 damage to them. So this is going to be really good for somebody who likes to cast a lot of spells. So for decks that have you need to cast 2 spells like the like mono white and Azorius, or even Is It, like you have a bunch of instants to play all at the same time, it'll deal 2 damage to them, which is pretty good. Rite of Harmony. It looks like this is getting an extended art card for Selesnya. Whenever a creature or enchantment enters the battlefield under your control this turn, draw a card. You can flashback it for 2 and a green and a white. So probably really good if you're going to go wide at this point. You play it, go wide. You could draw a card for everything that you play. So big end game stuff here if you want to try to fill the board. The next thing, we have the Consuming Blob. This is 2 green and 3 other. It's a creature. I think it's an ooze. I'd imagine it's an ooze. Consuming Blob's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. At the beginning of your end step, create a green ooze creature token. With this creature's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Okay. That's insane. You essentially get card types among cards in your graveyard. Instant sorceries, humans, creatures,
you know, enchantments, artifacts. I imagine it's probably creature types too, maybe. So like if it's a human werewolf or another ooze or something. And then at the end step, you literally just create tokens. You just keep creating a creature token. Now, it doesn't get at the beginning of your end step thing, the token doesn't, but it still gets its power and toughness, which is kind of crazy. So, a good mythic for 5. I'm curious to see how that's going to be run. Probably in, like, landfall stuff. That's probably how it's going to work out. Cursive Leeches. So, enchant the player for a black and 2. Enchant player, as this permanent transforms into Cursive Leeches, attach it to a player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, they lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. So there is a way for enchanted players' upkeep. So theoretically, that's not the beginning of your turn, so you really couldn't use it for Rakdos. But it's daybound. So if it turns nightbound, it becomes a creature, a 4/4 lifelink creature. And then if it ever becomes daybound, you just attach it to a player. So it's like a parasite. That's very interesting. It's also a horror. That would work out. Very cool. Baneblade Scoundrel is the next card. It's a black and 3 other. You get, whenever Baneblade Scoundrel becomes blocked, each creature blocking it gets -1/-1, and that's its daybound. Its nightbound is a werewolf, obviously. So this is another werewolf in the color of black. And then whenever it becomes blocked, -1/-1 till end of turn. Whenever a creature blocking Baneclaw Marauder dies, a creature's controller loses 1 life. A good way to kind of like get the more damage out, and it's also a 5/4. They just become so much stronger when they become werewolves, right? So that's crazy. Can't Stay Away is the next card, also getting an extended art thing. This is literally just a bunch of cats. That's cute. So there's a spirit of a cat right there. Oh, it's cute. Return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains if this creature would die, exile it instead. Flashback 3. So that's not bad. It essentially gives something Disturb. And then you can flashback something else, so that's nice. Geist Flame Reservoir. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Geist Flame Reservoir. Pay 1 in a red to tap. Remove any number of charge counters from Geist Flame Reservoir. It deals that much damage to any target. Okay. Then you can pay 1 in a red to tap it to exile the top card of your library, and you may play it this turn. So you're probably going to be doing that a lot until you can do that. I see like burn is a big thing right now. Red is getting a lot of burn stuff. Burn and werewolves. Thermo Alchemist, 1 in a red. It's got Defender, 0/3. Tap it. Thermo Alchemist deals 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, untap Thermo Alchemist. Wow. We're going to be getting a lot of burn. Think mono red burn's going to be a thing? Are we going to do mono red burn or is it burn? I don't know. I'm curious. Curious to see. I'm always curious to see what's going to happen with the meta. Heirloom Mirror, 1 black, 1 other for an artifact. Pay 1 and tap to pay 1 life. So that's a lot. You have to tap. You have to pay 1, tap, pay a life, and discard a card. Draw a card, mill a card. Then put a ritual counter on Heirloom Mirror. Then if it has 3 or more ritual counters on it, remove them and transform it. Activate only as a sorcery. To the Inherit Fiend, a 4/4 flyer demon. With flying, it's got 2 and a black. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on Inherent Fiend. I do not expect anybody to be running this. In my personal opinion, that is a lot to pay for a 4/4 demon that will literally die to removal. Like, imagine paying 1, paying a life, discarding a card, drawing a card, and milling a card, all to get a 4/4 flyer that doesn't even have, like, indestructible or anything. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's worth it, but it's just me. Foul Play. Destroy target creature with power 2 or less. Investigate. So we got the Investigate stuff coming up. Ominous Roost. When Ominous Roost enters the battlefield or whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard,
Create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying, and this creature can only block creatures with flying. So probably good for disturbed decks. Very, very neat. It's just another go wide thing. Village Watch. You have red and 4 for a 4/3, so kind of expensive for that. Haste. So you got haste, so haste is always great. But then if it's Nightbound, it's got wolves and werewolves you control have haste. So amazing. Is much better, obviously is much better Nightbound than it's Daybound. And that's just, of course, another big thing that like people are going to have to know when they're paying attention to the gameplay. They're going to want to go, all right, what has to happen here, right? What things are going to happen to make it change to day? What things are going to happen when it changes to night? How many things are going to have to go on all at the same time? And what do I have to pay attention to? So very, I don't know, very interesting. Essentially, I'd imagine there's a lot of like, don't do anything, wait till it's daytime, and then kill stuff when it's day because it's weaker. But anyway, the next card is Poppet Stitcher. It is a 1 blue and 2 other, a human wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more creature tokens, you may transform Poppet Stitcher into the Poppet Factory. Creature tokens you control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 3/3. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may transform Poppet Factory. So, wow, okay. So essentially, you get to create, anytime you cast an instant or sorcery, you create a creature token with Decayed. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more tokens, you may transform Poppet Stitcher. So you don't have to, right? But if you do, you can then transform it into an artifact to keep it from dying from like specific removal. And then creature tokens you control, so all your decay, your 2/2 zombies are now 3/3 zombies and do not have Decayed. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may transform this back to this in case you wanted to get more zombies. So I don't know. Dimir Zombies sounds like a fun idea, especially since you get a ton of removal with playing Dimir. But Golgari Zombies just feels like it's got a lot more recursion. I'm not quite sure. But this also, it's whenever you cast it, anytime. So like instants not on your turn, sorceries on your turn, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So maybe Dimir Zombies is the thing. But that's it. That's all for these. I apologize for the very long video, but I wanted to get a lot of this information out just to kind of go over. There's going to be more and more spoilers as the time go on. I imagine throughout this week, we're going to get a lot more spoilers, and I'm going to want to go over them. I'll make individual videos for the spoilers that do come out, but I like going over all these cards, checking them out with you guys, and generally having a great time. I'm still not sure what I want to run, right? And I need to think about this now because card prices are going to start going up, and they're going to start getting more and more expensive as we go, and I need to know whether or not I'm going to run. I'm torn between Rakdos Vampires, Ghoul Werewolves, or Selesnya Humans. Truly, I think those are the things. That or Angels. Or Clerics. Orzhov Clerics. Life gain stuff. But I don't even know if I want to do that, because I also want to play mono red goblins or devils or mono red burn. There's things. There's things that I have to figure out. But at the end of the day, we'll have to see. So, but let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about running. I'm curious what everyone's decisions are, and I'm really, really trying to wonder what I need to get done in order for me to have fun, right? It looks like there's a lot of fun cards that are coming out in Innistrad Midnight Hunt. A lot of fun cards for Commander, a lot of fun cards for Standard, just a lot of fun cards in general. I do think it's a smart move to go Rakdos Vampires, though. And I feel like that's really what I want to do, is play Rakdos Vampires. Because I feel like Rakdos Vampires is going to be the smarter move, just with Crimson Vow being a vampire-themed set.
Not to say that every card in there is going to be a vampire card, but we're probably obviously going to have a lot of vampire support in Crimson Vow. So it's kind of like one of those thinking ahead kind of things. But if you're really thinking ahead, you'd probably be looking at the Brothers War and Dominaria United, bring back all your artifacts and just start making an artifact deck. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate your support. Please, once again, if you did enjoy all this content, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to the channel. We do make daily videos. I try to get on top of these spoilers as often as possible. And then once the set's out, we'll do some, maybe like a box opening, or maybe we'll do some pack openings. We'll try to figure something out. But obviously I need to get the money for a box first, but we'll go from there. So thank you all so much. I appreciate your support. Please make sure to drink your water, eat your vegetables, and tell me what you're running. I'll see you guys in the next one. All right. Nerd out.